You're watching the History Fair channel. In this video we're looking at the First Battle of Kernstown. The First Battle of Kernstown was fought on March 23, 1862 in Frederick County and Winchester, Virginia. The opening battle of the Confederate Major General Thomas J. Stonewall Jackson's campaign through the Shenandoah Valley during the American Civil War. Attempting to tie down the Union forces in the valley under the overall command of Major General Nathaniel P. Banks, Jackson received incorrect intelligence that a small detachment under Colonel Nathaniel Kimball was vulnerable. But it was in fact a full infantry division, more than twice the size of Jackson's force. His initial cavalry attack was forced back, and he immediately reinforced it with a small infantry brigade. With his other two brigades, Jackson sought to envelop the Union right by way of Sandy Ridge. But Colonel Erastus B. Tyler's brigade countered this movement, and when Kimball's brigade moved to his assistance, the Confederates were driven from the field. There was no effective Union pursuit. Although the battle was a Confederate tactical defeat, it represented a strategic victory for the South by preventing the Union from transferring forces from the Shenandoah Valley to reinforce the Peninsula Campaign against the Confederate capital, Richmond. Following the earlier Battle of Hoke's Run, the First Battle of Kernstown may be considered the second among Jackson's rare defeats. Jackson's division had been withdrawn up the valley to cover the flank of General Joseph E. Johnston's army, withdrawing from the Centerville, Manassas area to protect Richmond. Without this protective movement, the Federal Army under Major General Nathaniel P. Banks might strike at Johnston through passes in the Blue Ridge Mountains. By March 12, 1862, Banks occupied Winchester. Jackson had just withdrawn from the town and marched his forces at a leisurely pace 42 miles up the Valley Pike to Mount Jackson. On March 21st, Jackson received word that Banks was splitting his force, with two divisions under Brigadier Generals John Sedgwick and Alpheus S. Williams returning to the immediate vicinity of Washington, D.C., freeing up other Union troops to participate in Major General George B. McClellan's Peninsula Campaign against Richmond. The remaining division, under Brigadier General James Shields, was stationed at Strasburg to guard the lower northeastern valley. Intelligence indicated that Shields' forces were withdrawing towards Winchester. Banks prepared to leave the valley on March 23rd. Jackson's orders from Johnston were to prevent Banks's force from leaving the valley. Jackson turned his men around and, in one of the more grueling forced marches of the war, moved northeast 25 miles on March 22nd, and another 15 to Kernstown on the morning of March 23rd. His cavalry, under Colonel Turner Ashby, skirmished with the Federals on March 22nd. Shields was wounded, suffering a broken arm from an artillery shell fragment. Despite his injury, Shields sent part of his division south of Winchester and one brigade marching to the north, seemingly abandoning the area. In fact, he halted nearby to remain in reserve. He turned over tactical command of his division to Colonel Nathan Kimball, who ordered the 2nd Brigade and some of his own troops along the Valley Turnpike. Despite Shields' orders to pursue the Confederate cavalry, Kimball posted 16 guns and 800 infantrymen in a defensive position on the military crest of Pritchard's Hill. Confederate loyalists in Winchester mistakenly informed Turner Ashby that Shields had left only 4 regiments and a few guns, about 3,000 men, and that these remaining troops had orders to march for Harper's Ferry in the morning. Ashby, who normally had a reputation as a reliable cavalry scout, did not verify these civilian reports and passed them on to Jackson. Jackson marched aggressively north with his 3,000 men division. reduced from its peak as stragglers fell out of the column, unaware that it was soon to be attacking more than 9,000 men. Jackson moved north from Woodstock and arrived before the Union positions at Kernstown around 11 a.m. Sunday, March the 23rd. The devoutly religious Jackson preferred to avoid battles on the Sabbath, but throughout this Civil War career, he did not hesitate when military advantage could be gained. He later wrote to his wife, "I felt it my duty to attack, in consideration of the ruinous effects that might result from postponing the battle until the morning. So far as I can see, my course was a wise one. The best that I could do under the circumstances, though very distasteful to my feelings. I hope and pray to our Heavenly Father that I may never again be circumstanced on this day. I believe that so far as our troops were concerned, necessity and the mercy both called for the battle. Arms is a profession that, if its principles are to be adhered for success, requires an officer to do what he fears may be wrong, if success is obtained." Jackson performed no personal reconnaissance before he sent Turner Ashby on a feint against Kimball's position on the Valley Turnpike, while his main force, the brigades of Colonel Samuel Fulkerson and Brigadier General Richard B. Garnick, attacked the Union artillery position on Pritchard Hill. The lead brigade under Fulkerson was repulsed, so Jackson decided to move around the Union right flank, about 2 miles west of Sandy Ridge, which appeared to be unoccupied. If this was successful, his men could move down the spine of the ridge and get into the Union rear, blocking their escape route to Winchester. Kimball countered the maneuver by moving his brigade under Colonel Erastus B. Tyler to the west, but Fulkerson's men reached a stone wall facing a clearing on the ridge before the Union men could. Jackson's aide, Sandy Pendleton, obtained a clear view from the ridge of the Union forces arrayed against them, and he estimated that there were about 10,000. He reported this to Jackson, who replied, "Say nothing about it. We're in for it." Around 4 p.m., Tyler attacked Fulkerson and Garnett by using an unorthodox approach with his brigade in close column of divisions. A brigade front of 2 companies with 48 companies lined up behind them in 24 lines, in all about 70 yards wide and 400 yards long, a formation difficult to control and lacking offensive power at the front. The Confederates were temporarily able to counter this attack with their inferior numbers by firing fierce volleys from behind the stone wall. Jackson, finally realizing the strength of the force opposing him, sent Colonel Jess Burke's brigade, which had been held in reserve, but by the time they arrived around 6 p.m, Garnett's Stonewall Brigade had run out of ammunition, and he pulled them back, leaving Fulkerson's right flank exposed. Panic set in among the Confederates, and as Burke's brigade arrived, it was caught in the fleeing mob and forced to retreat. Jackson tried in vain to rally his troops. He called out to a soldier, "Where are you going, man?" The soldier replied that he was out of ammunition. "Then go back and give them the bayonet," Jackson said. However, the soldier ignored him and kept running. Kimball organized no effective pursuit. That night, a cavalryman sat with Jackson by a campfire alongside the Valley Pike and jokingly said, "It was reported that they were retreating, General, but I guess they were retreating after us." Jackson, not known for his sense of humor, replied, "I think I am satisfied, sir." Union casualties were 590, 118 killed, 450 wounded, and 22 captured or missing. Confederates 718, 80 killed, 375 wounded, 263 captured or missing. Despite the Union victory, President Abraham Lincoln was disturbed by Jackson's audacity and his potential threat to Washington. He sent Banks back to the Valley along with Alpheus Williams' division. He was also concerned that Jackson might move into western Virginia against Major General John C. Fremont, so he ordered that the division of Brigadier General Louis Blenker, who detached from McClellan's Army of the Potomac and sent to reinforce Fremont. Lincoln also took his opportunity to re-examine Major General George B. McClellan's plans for the defenses of Washington, while the Peninsula Campaign was underway, and decided that the forces were insufficient. He eventually ordered that the corps of Major Generals Irvin McDowell, which was moving south against Richmond in support of McClellan, remain in the vicinity of the capital. McClellan claimed that the loss of these forces prevented him from taking Richmond during his campaign. The strategic realignment of Union forces caused by Jackson's battle at Kernstown, the only battle he lost in his military career, turned out to be a strategic victory for the Confederacy. The remainder of Jackson's Valley campaign consisted of lightning movements and 5 victories against superior forces, organized into 3 Union armies, which elevated him to the position of the most famous general in the Confederacy. Jackson refused to accept any responsibility for the defeat and subsequently arrested the commander of the old Stonewall Brigade, Brigadier General Richard B. Garnett, for retreating from the battlefield before permission was received. The Stonewall Brigade's withdrawal, which came after it received the bulk of the Union fire and suffered the majority of the Confederate casualties, uncovered the right of Fulkerson's brigade, forcing it also to withdraw and starting a panic. He was replaced by Brigadier General Charles S. Winder. During the invasion of Maryland in September, Robert E. Lee ordered the charges against him dropped, but Garnett suffered from the humiliation of his court-martial for over a year, until he was killed at Gettysburg during Pickett's charge. If you found the information in this video informative or helpful, please feel free to give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. I thank you very much for listening and watching this video.